morning. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Pinelands Commission was given in compliance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act by providing notice to all municipal and county clerks within the Pinelands area and to the Secretary of State on December 20th, 2017, and to the Commission's officially designated newspapers on December 20th, 2017, and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the Commission's office.
All right, we'll jump around on the agenda a little bit. If we could next rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we get going on our business, we have two new commissioners with us today, all right, of which we're going to swear them in. The first is Jordan P. Howe. Give us a brief bio on both the new commissioners here. Dr. Howe has served as Camden County's representative on the commission since January 2018. A resident of Haddon Township, Dr. Howe is an assistant professor in the Department of Geography, Planning, and Sustainability at Rowan University in Glassboro. He's also the program coordinator for environmental and sustainability studies degree programs. In this capacity, he's developed and published numerous peer-reviewed journal articles, book chapters, and policy white papers examining topics in infrastructure and environmental policy and governance. Some of his research has been funded by federal agencies like the National Science Foundation, National Endowment for the Humanities, and U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Additionally, he has created and led dozens of undergraduate courses on environmental issues, as well as courses on research design. Dr. Howe holds a PhD and Master of Science in Geography from Michigan State University and a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from the College of William and Mary. You guys could all join me in welcoming Dr. Jordan Howe. And now we need to do the swearing in.
You will stand up, please. Raise your right hand after me. I state your name.
I, Jordan Howe,
Solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same,
and to the governments established in the United States
to the governments established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties of the office of Pinelands Commissioner,
the duties of the office of Pinelands Commission
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
If you'd like to say anything now or later, that's fine. Up to you. Yep.
Okay. They're all different, so you never know how they work. But I'm really excited to be here. It's cool just to learn about a lot of these processes. I've done research on this stuff for like 10 years, but this is a very exciting opportunity for me to actually take some of the stuff that I work on in my professional career as a researcher and apply it to these actual problems of the New Jersey Pinelands. So nice to meet all of you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, up next, William Picolecki. Picolecki, jeez.
I confirm it this morning.
Okay. You should have corrected me before I embarrassed you. Mr. Picolecki is a resident of Woodbine Borough and was also nominated as commissioner since January of 2018. Mr. Picolecki has served as Woodbine's mayor since 1990. He has chaired the Pinelands Municipal Council, served on the Board of Trustees for Sustainable New Jersey, the Board of Trustees of the Woodbine Development Center, and on the Executive Board of New Jersey League of Municipalities. Additionally, He serves as Director of the New Jersey Conference of Mayors and is a member on the advisory board of the Ann Aziz Hall at Stockton University in Woodbine. Mr. Pickaliski was employed by the state of New Jersey for 27 years before retiring in 2002 from the position of Executive Assistant at the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. He is a graduate of the Camden County Police Academy and Rutgers University in Camden, a certified public manager program. Again, everybody, if you could welcome Mayor William Pickaliski. Set.
Right hand. I,
I, William Pickaliski,
solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same,
and to the governments established in the United States
to the governments established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
that I will faithfully,
and that I faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties of the office of Pinelands Commissioner,
perform all the duties of the office of Pinelands Commissioner
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
So help me God.
Bill, I'm sorry again for mispronouncing your last name. I'll try not to do it again. I'm sure I'm not the first one that's done that, but if you have anything to say, please.
Well, I just want to, it's an honor to be representing Cape May County. I want to thank my board of freeholders for appointing me. And Bill Brown has served for many, many years prior to me, and they're going to be big shoes to fill. His wife, but Bill was a person that I knew for a long time and followed in his footsteps, so to speak. And just look forward to working with the commission and the staff and the executive director. No stranger to Pinelands. I've been elected in office since 1978, so once Pinelands came, of course, my community, Woodbine, is in 97% of the Pinelands, covered by Pinelands. So we've been working through that for the last 30-some years, particularly in the last 29 years, 28 years as mayor, and doing some good things and following the guidelines and working with the staff, which greatly assisted us in moving. So I look forward in working with the commission.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to a regular agenda. Go with roll call.
Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Ashman, Commissioner Avery,
Here.
Commissioner Barr,
Here.
Commissioner Chila, Commissioner Galetta,
Here.
Commissioner Howell, Commissioner Janarone, Commissioner Lloyd,
Here.
Commissioner Lobauer,
Here.
Commissioner Pickaliski,
Here.
Commissioner Prickett,
Here.
Commissioner Quinn,
Here.
Commissioner Rowan Green, Chairman Irwin.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is the adoption of the January 12th, 2018 minutes. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain. I did read the minutes. So.
Good? Are we good? Okay. I'll make sure we get 8. All right. Committee and staff reports. First, we have policy and implementation from November 17th. I'll go ahead and read that one. Here's the summary. The Policy and Implementation Committee met, recommended certification on a number of items, of which we had Hamilton Township's Mays Landing Neighborhood Plan and Ordinance, revising zoning boundaries and permitted uses in the regional growth area. Jackson Township, we certified an amended housing and fair share plan as part of an ordinance permitting residential development in the RG2 and RG3 zones. And then in Manchester Township, we certified an ordinance revising zoning boundaries and permitted uses in the regional growth area zoning districts. The committee was also advised that the veto period for the adoption of the CMP amendments will expire on the 31st. And the rules are scheduled to become effective upon publication in the March 5th, 2018 edition of the New Jersey Register. Are there any questions on P&I meeting minutes? All right, move along to, I don't think we had any other committee, no budget, okay. Staff reports.
Okay. Alan, you want to listen to this? We began our training on the use of the Edmund software. And we are anticipating that that will be up and running by the beginning of March. Yep, so we are close. It seems good. Staff likes it. The requisition forms, the trainer was here for a couple of days. I guess he'll be back again, and they have our data. We are including CATS, our timesheet. We've been using the CATS system, which is what the state uses, but we've been using the really old version that DEP gave us probably 20-something years ago. So it's torturous. So that'll be good too. So that is ongoing, and we should be reporting successful use by the next meeting. I met with Commissioner Howell. I spoke with Commissioner Pikaliski to give them a big packet of great information, get them to sign their lives away on ethics. And I will try, and I will ask staff to try to be a little more, provide a little more explanation of what we're doing for the next couple of meetings so they understand, since the more comfortable we get with commissioners, the less we feel like we have to explain, and that's not necessarily a good thing, particularly since there's always public here. So we will try to do that. I did go to the municipal council meeting. I will tell you most of the conversation at the municipal council meeting was about the mayor coming to be a commissioner. So other than that, they didn't talk about too much. They had a presentation about urban and neighborhood forests, which was interesting for the towns. And the only other thing I have, which I suppose is stealing Susan's thunder, but it's just the statement that we will in fact be in the March 5th register on the rule proposal. It made its way through the new administration. I believe Craig Ambrose was helpful to us in that regard to convince them that we weren't trying to do anything awful and horrible. Thank you. And it will be in the March 5th register finally. I hate to even think of how long that took. Years. And that's all I have.
Good morning, Larry Liggett. I'm going to brief you a couple of projects I wanted to bring you up to date on. A few months ago, NASA approached us about doing a joint project on using remote sensing to assess fire risks in the Pinelands. We have maps that do that, but we thought it would be good to work with them to see if there's anything new or our maps are still relevant. And so Gina Berg has been, we started our working meetings. We're going to have over the phone working meetings every 2 weeks, and the project should be done in about 3 months. We'll have a new tool to perhaps assess fire risks. The long-term economic monitoring, which we do every year, we have 3 projects going on, and this year the annual data update, Gina Berg has made great progress on, and she's closing in on finalizing the data, and all we have to do is put the report together, and then we'll bring it back to the Commission for a briefing. It'll be a 2-year report, as you might remember, because we have so much else going on there. The other 2 things we have going on is, one, we're assessing the entire program, make sure it's up to date and as good as it can be. We hired Rutgers to give us some advice on that. We had hoped to get a report from Rutgers in early this year. They're a little behind. They're about a month behind, but we're still eager to get the report in so we can assess how effective our monitoring has been. And the third aspect that we're working on is the idea of doing an enhanced website for all this data we gather so the public can get access to it. And we've been talking to the state, who is contracted with a firm, and they're using a software called Socrata to make data open source. About 25 states have done that around the country. New Jersey started to do it, and we're thinking about using that platform in their software. We are waiting to see the new direction, if any, from OIT in the state. They're going to continue with this. We assume they are. There's no indication they're not, but we just want to make sure before we jump into it that we aren't left there by ourselves. So it'll probably be a couple of months before we move into that. But then we'll use the platform, and they have a lot of tools so that they can make the experience very user-friendly. So it'll be for everybody. That's all I have.
Good morning, Commissioners, members of the public. Chuck Horner, the Director of Regulatory Programs, the Permitting Office with the Pinelands Commission. I just had 4 brief items to mention. The first one is the staff met with Pemberton Township officials last week. The township is interested in connecting 2 existing schools that are located on Fort Dix Road, for those of you that may be familiar with the area. Right before the entrance to the base, they'd like to connect those schools to public sanitary sewer. The schools predate the Pinelands Commission. They're located in one of the Commission's management areas that does not permit the extension of public sanitary sewer except under limited circumstances. One of those circumstances is if it's demonstrated that it's a public health hazard. The 2 schools are currently served by one combined on-site wastewater treatment plant that disposes of the wastewater on the site and discharges to a stream. We're currently evaluating that proposal, and we have another meeting scheduled with the township for the beginning of this coming week. The second item that I wanted to mention was staff met with Stafford Township officials, in particular their administrator, earlier this week. The purpose of that was to discuss a proposed road improvement on Route 72 in the regional growth area. In the general vicinity of the stormwater management basin that the Commission approved a waiver of strict compliance for probably close to a year ago by now. In the discussions that we had about the proposed road improvement, the administrator indicated that the township is not going to move forward with the stormwater basin. The primary reason for that is a funding issue, but the administrator indicated that the township, simply because of the cost, will not move forward with that basin. The third issue I wanted to mention was several meetings ago, I discussed that Jackson Township had a proposal in front of the Commission to construct a solar facility on an existing capped landfill in the township, and that proposal was raising issues with threatened endangered species issues, in particular a plant. And I'm happy to report that working with the staff, other agencies, and the applicant has submitted a revised proposal for that solar facility that avoids the impact to the particular plant and is consistent with our rules. So we're hopeful that that one will move forward. And the last thing I just wanted to mention, at the last Commission meeting, there was a discussion about the requirements through the Board of Public Utilities and the utility companies on the maximum height of trees that could be under an electric transmission line. I do not have an answer for that question yet. I'm working on it, but I have not forgotten it. That's all I have.
The BPU rules on vegetation management say 3 feet. That's a yes.
But what about the wireless?
They don't speak to it. They just say 3 feet.
So their rules say that the utility has the right and duty to cut anything higher than 3 feet. Is that the way it reads?
In the area of the, yes.
Under the wire.
Yes.
How far out does that go?
It's not a beefy rule.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions? I didn't get to ask. Any questions for Nancy, Larry, or Chuck? Good.
Chuck, on the Route 72 issue in the water and the basin, As I recall, we supported that basin because there's a serious flooding issue on the other side of Route 72. Does what you reported this morning mean that we're not going to be addressing that flooding issue for the time being?
According to the administrator, the township is taking some interim steps to replace some stormwater pipes, and they may come forward with a proposal to improve their existing basin to try to address or mitigate the flooding issue.
The existing basin is on the other side of 72. I think it was the north side of 72.
Correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the reason we allowed for the basin south of 72 because there was an urgent need to protect houses from flooding?
Correct.
Just checking. Okay, I think we should talk more about this.
And I think, and in fairness, I think the township is interested still in the basin. It's just a cost issue.
I believe they had a funding source.
They did have a funding source.
Went away.
Because
Yes.
of the time involved in getting some approvals, ours being one of them. So they ran that funding source went dry.
Thank you.
Any other questions for? And who else do we have? Joel, are you taking over today?
Yep.
All right, what you got?
I'm Joel Mott. I'm our public program specialist. And first thing I'll say real quick, I'm really excited about this year's Pinelands short course. It's about a month away. It's going to be March 10th down at Stockton. If the commission members would like to participate, the sooner you let me know, the better, because courses are starting to fill up. We're kind of ahead of schedule. We've got roughly 400 people signed up already, and there seems to be a lot of excitement with this year's content. It's probably the most content we've provided in the one day. We have 41 different programs, all on different aspects of the Pinelands. Besides that, I'm very excited. We have made significant progress with our permitting issues for the Pinelands exhibits here in the office. I can't say that we're going to knock the wall down tomorrow and we're going to start, but we've been dealing with a number of issues related to fire code. We're working with the Department of Treasury and the State Division of Property Management, and they asked that the shop drawings of the exhibits be edited to include all the materials, construction materials, and with reference to certain fire codes, flame spread data, a bunch of things that we weren't prepared for. Those have been completed. There's 18 drawings that were done. They're going to be submitted, and we're waiting to hear where that's going to put us in the permitting process. But we do believe that was really the last piece of the puzzle that was kind of holding us back. And our next step would be in the relatively near future. Once that's secured, we'll meet with a contractor and the exhibit fabricator and kind of come up with a new timeline and come up with, physically when we're going to start. Hopefully sometime maybe this summer, depending on, how things shake out.
It's another note that Paul hits on now and again. We are streaming today.
We are streaming. We're live. We've worked in kind of, through trial and error. We've come up with a much better mechanism to record the sound. So now we're using the room's AV system, and the sound comes across much clearer. So we've definitely improved our streaming product.
Just a reminder, make sure everybody
Last
use your
couple
mic when we're talking or giving presentations today, so we can hear it online.
Joel, I'm looking forward to the program. Charles Beckwith, the director of the Cranberry Substation from 1918 to 1944, is doing a presentation in the boardroom, I understand.
Yep.
Pretty big venue. And he has some fellow reenactors that will be there, Elizabeth White and her sister Viola, and their brother-in-law, Franklin S. Chambers. And the interesting thing about these folks is they lived over here. The Darlingtons and the Whites lived next door in Fenwick Manor, and Franklin S. Chambers lived next door, that big house on the corner. So they're excited to come out and do a presentation. And so right here in New Lisbon, there's a lot of very important history that had a lot to do with the Pinelands, a lot to do with the development of Woodward and Cranberry. So I'm looking forward to that presentation.
Yep, it's neat. I mean, that's the really cool thing about the short course is we're able to bring in history, we're able to bring in ecology, we really focus on all aspects of the Pinelands, and there's really something for everybody. And like this year, for instance, you'll be able to step back in time, and that's a pretty neat facet.
Any other questions for Joel?
Mr. Chairman, Thank you. Joel, I know we've been talking about the Visitor Center for quite a while, and it occurs to me that one thing we don't talk about when we talk about the Visitor Center is the fact that we're hoping to attract a lot of new visitors here once the Visitor Center is open. And I wonder if there's going to be a component for directional signage to help new visitors find their way to this location. And there's no sign out on the corner of Pemberton Road, for example, telling people to turn here to.
Right. You know, that's interesting. There was a sign at one time. We'll have to work maybe with the DOT to get that put back up. But there was a sign at 5:30, and I think last winter, or maybe even earlier this winter, it had gotten knocked down. And so we can address that issue. I mean, that's definitely the goal. I mean, we have a fair amount of visitor traffic in the summertime already and just kind of pop in. And with the enhancements with the Pinelands exhibits, we'll be able to kind of tell our story and really put that why are we protecting the Pinelands. Myself and Paul have also worked on kind of a visitor use plan. So one of the things that we do to some extent now is we do have some educational programs and speaker series programs here on site. And that's something that we'll work to, add to in the future. So instead of me going to some of the schools to do our outreach program, we'll then have the schools come here. And we would utilize this room kind of as an orientation area, and then we would kind of teach about the Pinelands and then show them the Pinelands exhibit. And that's really the direction we'd be going. And really I think it's important to, the idea behind it is about the why. We protect the Pinelands, we have rules to protect the Pinelands, and now we have an exhibit to kind of explain to people why we're protecting what we're trying to protect. And that's really the long-term goal of the program.
Thanks, Joe. Just make sure that it's easy for folks to get here.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning,
Stacey.
Commissioners. I also have some good news today. As many of you may recall, a couple of months ago, we received a affirmative decision from the Appellate Division in a case entitled Peg Leg Web. Peg Leg involved a property owner of a parcel. He wanted to construct a new mining operation. The parcel had been rezoned to forest, where a new mining operation would not be permitted. We prevailed first went to OAL, we prevailed in OAL. The commission issued a final decision affirming the initial decision from OAL. The Appellate Division held with the commission. The property owner sought certification from the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court this week denied that. So that matter is now closed. The parcel is zoned as forest area, and that new mining operation will not be coming into being.
Any questions for Stacey? Susan, anything? No? Any other reports? No? All right.
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask the appropriate staff to talk a little bit about the status of the heritage mineral application, which I believe was the subject of a CAFRA public hearing last night?
Okay, I will start, but then I will quickly deflect it off because this precedes me by many years. But the heritage mineral, oddly, I've been involved in the heritage mineral project, both when I was at DEP and then at the builders and then back at DEP. It's been around a long time. It's in Manchester, sort of wedged between Route 70 and Route 37. The commission had entered into a settlement agreement on this matter. The entirety of the development part of the project is in the reserve, but in the Pinelands area. And there was a settlement agreement with the developer and DEP and the Pinelands Commission. And the developer continued to want to, I think, do different things. And the status of the settlement agreement is now up in the air legally. I believe that DEP held a public hearing on the CAFRA application because they had to. I don't think they've made any decisions. I think it was a 90-day rule issue and they had to proceed. But I will turn over for more information to Susan and or Stacey, who are more involved in it. But it's got a very long history here.
This project also precedes me. I was at the department when this was going on. So in any event, as Nancy said, there was a settlement agreement in 2004 with regard to the parcel. The parcel is located in the PNR, and there's also a portion of the site, 6,100 acres, is in the Pinelands area itself. Under the settlement, that 6,100 acres, in addition to 350 or so acres in the Berkeley Triangle, were supposed to be preserved. And the area that was previously disturbed under the mining operations was reconfigured and ultimately rezoned by the commission from rural to regional growth area. So the settlement envisions that all of the development would occur within that previously mined area. There are radioactive tailings on the site. It was a sand mine. The settlement was extended, or extensions were signed by the parties, many extensions. In about 2016, the department decided that since the property owner had not moved forward, despite the fact that the commission had moved forward with the rezoning, the department had moved forward with having the area redesignated, the development area redesignated under the state plan as a planning area 2. It had moved forward with the water quality management plan that was required in order to implement the settlement and the development. And the development at that time that was permitted under the settlement was approximately 2,450 units. The department and the commission agreed that since the property had not been conserved, although the state actors had moved forward, they were not going to further extend that settlement agreement. The property owner ran back into federal court to reinvigorate the federal litigation. The Division of Law, on behalf of the state entities, went in and made a motion for summary judgment. The federal magistrate decided that she wasn't going to decide the motion. So that is still languishing in court. She brought the parties in, held those motions in abeyance, and has been trying to get the parties to negotiate for a settlement. As part of those negotiations, the applicant was allowed to come forward with the new CAFRA permit. And as you all know from the papers, the CAFRA permit that has been submitted now envisions 4,000 units and some 40,000 square foot commercial, amongst other things. DEP held its public hearing on the CAFRA permit because DEP has to, once an application is deemed administratively complete, under CAFRA has to decide within 90 days. So the comment period public hearing occurred last night. There are issues with the site. In particular, traffic is a major issue at the site. The interchanges, there are 2 roads, one on Colonial, one on Stephanie. Those intersections are at level of service D. So in any event, with regard to the litigation proceeds. The Division of Law will be back in court on March 23rd. And the application is here with the commission because under CAFRA, although the commission does not have primary jurisdiction, the Department of Environmental Protection has primary jurisdiction with regard to development in the CAFRA zone. We are a consulting party, so we will provide comments with regard to consistency of the proposed development with the comprehensive management plan. Please recognize that under the CAFRA rules, or actually the coastal rules, DEP views the CMP, its obligation as fulfilling the intent and the goals, not necessarily the verbatim words of the CMP. And again, they have primary jurisdiction. But staff will be preparing a comment letter that it will provide to the department, and will continue to work with the department on this matter. We are a party to the litigation, so I continue to work with the AG's office with regard to the commission's interests in the federal litigation. Any questions for me? That is correct.
When are our comments due to the department?
I'm sorry, what?
When are our comments due to the department?
The comment period with regard to the public hearing closes in 15 days. So I calculated that as March 23rd. We don't have that similar timeline. So we've advised the department that we need more time. And we are working with the department, February. And we're working with the department with regard to that.
I'm still unclear about the status of the settlement. Is it in place or not in place?
That is an interesting question. I discussed that with the Deputy Attorney General that is representing DEP, and at the moment also the Commission. The settlement has expired. The prior settlement has expired. However, The parties are in negotiations with regard to a settlement agreement. I would think that the old settlement would inform whatever may come out of the current litigation and any proposed new settlement. But as it stands today, that settlement is expired. However, we have implemented the obligations of that settlement. So the regional growth area zoning is in place. The state planning designation 2 is in place. The water quality management planning designation or permitting water and sewer in that area is in place.
So what you're telling me is that there wouldn't be a need for the commission to be a party to any new settlement as long as what's proposed is consistent with the changes to our documents that we've already made.
I'm not sure I would go that far, Commissioner Avery. I think that I would advise the commission that it should be a participant in the settlement because it was a participant previously, but you are correct. To the extent that the actions the commission has taken inform the development capability out there, those decisions are in place.
So if we are a party to a new settlement, this commission will have to authorize that new settlement. So there will be an action.
And I was going to get to that. I thought the question was merely with regard to the development, that since it's CAFRA, there is no role outside. Yes. With regard to the settlement, if there is a new settlement, that will be brought back before the commission because we are a party. I mean, certainly the commission, I would believe, would want to see the conservation that was envisioned in the first settlement actually occurring. And based on what I've seen in the paper, I believe the applicant is proceeding with the understanding that that preservation has to occur. That's what I read. That 6,100 acres has to be preserved. And in addition, I believe they've moved forward with some of the acquisition already with regard to the Berkeley Triangle, 200 and some acres or so.
Just have two questions. One, what's DEP's deadline to make a decision under the 90-day rule or the permit?
To be honest with you, I do not know. I apologize. I will get that information for you. And you know, Commissioner Lloyd, based on public comment, they could then decide they need new information or additional information, go back to the applicant. But I'll see where they are.
Thank you.
Would they be able to request additional time if they needed to respond to our comments as well?
They would have to get the applicant's approval, I believe, in order to stop the clock, because otherwise under the 90-day clock, there would be an issue.
It's deemed approved if they don't act.
Correct.
So arguably their only option would be to deny it.
Correct.
Based upon the record and then get the additional information. But
however, I do know that, like I said, traffic is a major concern, and I don't know whether or not they've obtained the requisite information they need with regard to that issue.
Has DOT been involved in this?
Not that I'm aware.
I haven't seen the actual application, only what I've read in the newspaper, and I take that with a grain of salt. But my understanding is that they've reduced by one of the access routes out to a state highway.
They actually originally came in about December of last year, actually no, December of 2016, with an application for 3 roads. Both DEP and the commission said that was a non-starter, so they eliminated that 3rd road.
So the only access would be to Route 37 by Colonial Drive and by the existing entrance to Heritage Minerals on Route 7.
That is correct.
So if they needed another access permit to a state highway, DOT would have to act on that. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I guess the other question I had, is there an opportunity to cluster here? I mean, I guess the question is could that be a comment for us? I guess we can't impose it, but based upon our clustering policies?
So,
yeah, please.
The settlement agreement, if you will, was in effect a giant cluster development. It designated a development area, which is about 1,000 acres, turned it into a regional growth area, and clustered all the development there. So the 2,450 units were all going to go there, and everything around it would be preserved. So that's still the general idea. If you saw the plans of what the actual subdivision plan looks like for the 1,000-acre development area, I mean, every square inch is covered with apartments and single-family houses and commercial. So everything is clustered there, with the remaining holdings around it preserved. So it really is like a cluster development. It's just very dense, very dense.
not to beat a dead horse, but I will. And I have. As I understand it, the original number of units was based on our average net density requirements for the amount of land and the development area of the plan, which came up with 2450. The question I have to DEP is, and I understand they have to act on an application submitted, but what has changed since 2004 that would make anybody consider that number? My final question is, Susan, do you know what the status of Manchester zoning is for this parcel?
Oh,
because there was a move to change the zoning 2 or 3 years ago, and that was vetoed by the mayor.
Right.
And I don't know what they've done since.
So interestingly enough, I discovered fairly recently that years ago when the commission authorized the settlement agreement, the township was not a party to that settlement agreement, to their dismay. Back then, some of you may recall they were not happy about that. Nevertheless, the settlement agreement went through, the commission changed the management area boundaries, as Stacy mentioned. Not long thereafter, the township adopted amendments to its zoning plan to mirror the settlement agreement. Their zoning ordinance actually specifically cites the settlement agreement and says this is what is permitted in the area. What Alan's referring to is a year or two ago, the property owner and the township got together and formed sort of a working group or committee to look at redevelopment options for the site, designated the area as a redevelopment area, the entire 6,000 or 7,000 acres. And the township proceeded to adopt a redevelopment plan, which permitted, I think it was 6,000 units perhaps, even well in excess of what the current CAFRA permit application calls for. So the township adopted that. And then a month later, the mayor vetoed the ordinance, having second thoughts. There's a lot of public comment, a lot of opposition. So that plan's off the table. I don't believe that there have been any further significant discussions between the property owner and the township since then. What's being proposed in the CAFRA permit now, the 4,000 units, is inconsistent with the zoning that the township has in place. So there's going to be an issue there. I should tell you too, in my meetings with Manchester most recently, they have indicated an interest in asking the commission to certify the zoning in the National Reserve portion of the township, which is an optional process outside the Pinelands area. They have other reasons for doing that unrelated to the heritage site. They have some other properties where our management area lines and their zoning and the state planning designations don't match, and it's causing some problems. So they are likely to be requesting that maybe even as soon as next week. And that'll give us an opportunity to work with the township more directly on the zoning plan for the heritage site. So we'll have a better role there and ability to actually approve what's in place now. So I view that as a good thing too, that we're hoping to tie all this together.
So are they before the township planning board now?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Do,
right? As far as we know, they've not filed.
Do you have a date for the original settlement?
A what?
A date for the original settlement?
I think I do.
It was approved March 14, 2004. Excuse me, May 14, 2004.
And we were a party to that.
And we were party to that. And PPA was party as well. So DEP, us, PPA.
Thank you.
And just so you know, PPA is still involved in federal litigation.
They supported the settlement at the time.
Yes, at the time. Pinelands Preservation Alliance was a party back in 2004, and since the case has been reopened essentially as federal court, they are involved in that now.
Thank you, Mr.
Any other questions on heritage?
Thanks for the update.
Okay, move on to resolutions, of which we have several. The first of which is a combined resolution for matters in Jackson Township, demolishing a structure, one for DEP Parks and Forestry for forestry activity on 13 acres in Wharton, and DOT application for sidewalk and guide rail improvements on Route 73.
I'd like to move it, Chair.
Second? Is there any questions?
I have a comment. I want to thank, I guess, Mr. Horner for providing the picture. And it is an old sewage treatment plant. And I just wanted to comment a little bit about the history. There certainly is an evolution in sewage treatment plants. And they became needed after cities, towns got water systems. And the water systems enabled individual residents to have water closets. And at the same time, I guess, the state passed laws so that each municipality could have a board of health. And they counted the number of cholera cases and other illnesses, deaths within a municipality. And so when water closets came in, they basically piped that water from the water closets into the streams, at least if they had a stream in the area. And people would, of course, get their water from the streams, but municipalities frequently made sure that the water that was disposed of was the outgoing water. It wasn't water that was used by the water department in the municipality. So the result was the town downstream would sue, go to court, and force the municipality to correct that. And so I just find that interesting that this is how these systems developed. It wasn't, maybe in some cases, individual towns put them in because they thought it was the right thing to do, but it was that legal pressure from downstream municipalities that forced the town to put money out to put these systems in. And it also involved the whole development of the science of sewage treatment, and that really came out of New Brunswick, the agricultural experiment station that was established there many years ago. So I think it's still true today. I can remember living in Medford Lakes, and Medford Lakes, they didn't have a tertiary sewage treatment plant. And so Birchwood Lakes, the community down from there, their lakes looked like golf courses. And they went to court and sued. So I think that's some of the basis of the laws that we deal with in the commission. I'm not sort of the authority on it, but it all comes down to health. You know, if you have cholera, Board of Health is going to come in and make people do things. And I guess today, all of our sewage permits, if you have a sewage treatment plant, a septic system on your property, the Board of Health has to approve it. So just one other little tidbit. There was a boarding house in New Lisbon a number of years ago that was there in association with J.J. White, and that boarding house pumped the sewage right into the Rancocas. And the Board of Health came in and stopped it. This is back in 1900 or so. So the Board of Health, yay, Board of Health, even today. So thank you for indulging me.
Yeah. I don't know how deep we want to get into this discussion, Rick, but I think a significant development in this regard was the passage of the Clean Water Act of 1972, which made billions of dollars available for regional sewage treatment plants. And so some of these problems got resolved, and by no means all.
I hate to take us off this topic, but
No, you don't.
I do have a question for Director Horner with regard to the DEP application in Wharton Forest, that part of this resolution. They're proposing to do thinning in a portion, a 13-acre portion of Wharton State Forest. And I had a question, Chuck, about the reference to herbicide. They intend to use herbicide in an area where we know there are T&E plant species as well as animal species. And I wonder if you could elaborate more on how, what we're doing to try to protect those species from any effects of this herbicide.
Certainly, Commissioner. In the report, as you accurately noted, the commission required certain steps, and DEP actually proposed certain steps to avoid irreversible adverse impact to threatened and endangered species. Probably the most significant issue was the potential presence of a threatened plant species. The threatened plant species is associated with wetland habitat. Based on that fact, the commission asked and DEP agreed that they would limit the actual forestry operation and the proposed herbiciding to only uplands. So they moved the proposed forestry from wetland areas and also proposed a 100-foot buffer to that wetland area. So the staff concluded that that would protect the concerned plant, since neither forestry or herbiciding would be occurring in the vicinity of wetlands where this plant may be present. I need to emphasize we're not certain the plant is there, but DEP agreed with that approach to protecting the plant. The other issues concern threatened and endangered species issues, concern possible presence of a threatened snake species and also threatened bird species. The herbicide, if used, is going to be limited to the hand application of herbicides. This isn't a situation that we rarely see anymore with the aerial spraying of herbicides. This is simply the hand application of herbiciding, and the staff concluded that that would be consistent with our threatened and endangered species standard.
Thanks very much.
Any other questions or comments on this resolution? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, next we've got some resolutions on planning matters. These are the matters that we had previously discussed as part of our P&I summary. First of which is the certification of Mays Landing's neighborhood plan for Hamilton Township. We have a motion.
I'd like to move that. Second.
Any questions or comments there?
Maybe you could do just a little summary. We have 2 new commissioners. Just for these matters came before the Policy and Implementation Committee, so some commissioners here have seen it. Oftentimes, then we just sort of push it through, even though some of the commissioners hadn't heard anything about it. So we'll take a moment here.
And because I thought this might happen, Joel has made sure that all of the nice maps are available. These were included in the reports, but so what Hamilton Township has done is adopted what they're referring to as the Mays Landing Neighborhood Plan, an amendment to the Township Master Plan. And it contains numerous recommendations to focus on the developed historic portion of Mays Landing, most of which, as you can see from the map here in orange, is in the regional growth area in development category. There's a tiny little finger on the top there that's a forest area. Most of Mays Landing is in the Pinelands area itself, but there is a portion to the left of the screen there that's in the National Reserve outside the Pinelands area. So the township has long had an interest in revitalizing and encouraging redevelopment and reuse of structures in Mays Landing. That's what the plan focuses on. The ordinance that the township has adopted is intended to implement some of those recommendations. So they've added and changed some of the permitted uses in the many zoning districts within Mays Landing to include things like bed and breakfasts, a number of new commercial uses, art galleries, museums. They've changed some of the zoning boundaries within Mays Landing to match up better with existing development. There's, I think, 6 or 7 lots within the Pinelands area portion of Mays Landing that have been rezoned. They're all developed properties already, so we're not talking about any real vacant land here. It's really more redevelopment they're trying to encourage. The most significant part of it for the commission, from the perspective of our regulations, was the addition of mixed-use buildings as a permitted use in one of the zones here in Mays Landing, and that would involve commercial uses on the ground floor and apartments on the upper floors. And again, you know, there's really no vacant lots here, but the township's idea was to at least provide an opportunity for conversion of existing buildings into mixed-use development. get some more residents in the downtown area and revitalize the area that way. So when we looked at that, our real only concern was if there's going to be any significant amount of new residential development, then the comprehensive management plan requires the township to accommodate opportunities for the use of Pinelands development credits, which is our transfer of development rights program. So we did discuss that with the township. They have included in the ordinance a provision that would require the use of credits if in fact someone proposes one of these mixed use buildings and it involves 5 or more new apartments. I think that may be somewhat unlikely, but it is a possibility. And never, so if it does occur, then there will be a requirement for the use of PDCs. And we think that that's sufficient to address the Pinelands requirements. So we're recommending approval. We did have a public hearing. The township's community development director came to the hearing. He was our only attendee, and he just explained a little further, the township's goals and what they were seeking to achieve, and that summary is in the report.
I know many of you were at the P&I meeting for the presentation, but are there any other comments or questions on Hamilton Township? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to note that, this is a very salutary change because as Mays Landing has discovered in many other communities around our state that have downtown business districts, they wind up losing over time some of the businesses in that district to homes or to non-retail oriented businesses, which winds up ruining the strength of the downtown. And this zoning change is going to allow them to try to recapture some of that property and bring it more in line with a walkable retail district. So it's a very positive development for them.
Anyone else? All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Next one is Jackson. And do we have a presentation on that too?
Well, I'll just briefly say that, as I said at the P&I meeting, it's been a long road with Jackson. Working with them on the regional growth area portion of the township. You can see the map Joel has so nicely put up there for us. The orange area is the existing regional growth area, and the Pinelands area portion of Jackson. So it's not huge when compared to the remainder of the township. They have extensive areas of forest area and preservation area. But it has been the source of a lot of concern from the township pretty much since Nancy's been here. The whole time she's been here, we've been working with Jackson on different zoning plans, different permitted use issues. The township has had an interest in reducing the amount of residential development in this area for a long time. There was a significant push to rezone the entire regional growth area to a commercial zone. That did not come to fruition.
The part where it was too close to the base and the planes would make too much
Correct.
noise, so there couldn't be any residential, and then that went away. I don't know how many of you remember this road we took with Jackson, but
we've gone sort of around in a circle with them. There were a few years there where they were really pushing to downzone and change to non-residential uses because of concerns about noise impacts from the nearby base. And then affordable housing issues arose, and the township really hadn't done much in terms of providing opportunities for affordable housing. All of the recent efforts, and then they were in court, and that really changed the whole perspective, I think. And township has recently signed a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing on its affordable housing obligation. Jackson's obligation is substantial. It's one of the highest we've seen in any of our Pinelands communities. They have both a prior obligation of about 1,250 units that they have to meet, and then they have a current or prospective obligation going forward of just about, again, that many units, 1,247, some new units that they need to, of affordable housing they need to accommodate. It's a large, large obligation, and that's a reduction from what their numbers actually were. That's the number they settled on. So that has really spurred the township to, they've adopted a housing plan, which is part of the resolution in front of you, to show court how they're going to go about satisfying that obligation. A lot of the new development that will occur is outside the Pinelands area, significant amounts of development. But in the Pinelands area, in the regional growth zones, they have shown the court and documented in the housing plan that there are a number of fairly significantly sized residential projects that are going to go forward in the regional growth area. And so to do that, they had to maintain the densities. They had to maintain the residential densities that were planned for that area. They weren't able to downzone, and they weren't able to change to the commercial zoning they had thought about for some time. So we're sort of back to where we started. We have the same regional growth area boundaries as before. The densities in these two zones are the same as they were before. There are a few, I'll call them somewhat minor changes in terms of the housing types that are permitted. They're allowing attached units for the affordable housing component of the project in these two zones. And they have addressed the need to accommodate opportunities for Pinelands development credits by requiring a 30% mandatory use of credits in projects that are 5 units or more that are sewered in these zones. I made mention in the report, because I couldn't help myself, that there have been no PDCs used in Jackson's regional growth area since the beginning of time. That's a real problem. And particularly when the amount of vacant land keeps shrinking, you know, we needed to make sure that that real opportunities were provided on the remaining lands that are left, rather than just allowing for the optional provisions to continue, because that really has not worked in Jackson. So it also allowed the township to exempt affordable units from the PDC requirement, which was important to them to make all of their plans work. So here we are, 7 years later. The zoning is basically the same in terms of the number of units that can be permitted. That hasn't changed. The PDC requirements, we think, are much better now, and we're recommending approval.
Before we take comments, I did not take a motion on this. We have a motion on this resolution? Second. All right, now, any questions or comments on the Jackson resolution?
Oh, I should mention we did have a public hearing, and no one came. Nor did we receive any written comments. We were surprised. We were very surprised, given the amount of public interest over the years, and we knew that the township had, a lot of their meetings have been very controversial and well attended, so we really did think we were going to get at least a written comment, but we did not.
Mr. Chairman, I have to say for the record that it's a shame that the eastern or the western part of the regional growth area of Jackson is probably the nicest section of privately owned forest remaining in Ocean County. It's just a gorgeous piece of ground, and the county already owns the riverfront that abuts this property. We've tried to buy the rest, but the seller isn't willing. But I know it's been the subject of application previously. There isn't T&E on it, according to our staff, and I've tried to buy it for 40 years, and I'm losing my opportunity, I think. But it's affordable housing is going to be a real issue for all our towns. It forces them to a higher density than really is marketable anywhere else. And Jackson was busy churning along affordable housing units before everybody started adding regulations, and it's a shame that this has come to this, but it is what it is. That's the law. Thank you.
Any other comments on the Jackson resolution? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Abstain? Okay. Next, we're certifying an ordinance for Manchester Township. Do we have a motion on that ordinance? Second?
Second.
All right. Susan, do you have anything on this one?
Just real briefly, this is another regional growth area zoning change. This area should look familiar to our Ocean County representative. The area highlighted in yellow was the subject of a builder's remedy affordable housing lawsuit many, many years ago in Manchester, and as a result, the township changed the zoning for this area in yellow from non-residential to residential to accommodate 350 some units. That was quite a few years ago. I've forgotten how many, but a long time ago. And it's clear now that that housing development is not going to happen. That's not on the table anymore. There's not an interest in pursuing that project. Also in the intervening years, Ocean County purchased the property, the large vacant property, there you go. And that's, the commission approved, I think it's the county road maintenance garage there, fairly recently. So obviously that site's no longer available for the residential development that had been anticipated. So the township has adopted an ordinance to change the zoning of this entire yellow area back to the way it was before the builder's remedy affordable housing litigation, so that it's now back in what they call the office research light industrial zoning district. Piece in the middle there in the yellow where you can see the disturbance, that is an old industrial use. I've forgotten exactly what it is, but so the zoning does sort of reflect what's there now. You can see, though, that it's right in between two very large, densely developed residential projects. So it's an interesting sort of piece of the puzzle in Manchester. But so they've rezoned it back to the non-residential zoning district classification. And at the same time, they, because Manchester, like Jackson, also has an affordable housing obligation, are mindful of the fact that they need to provide residential development opportunities and affordable housing opportunities. So they have added apartments and townhouses as permitted uses in this office research light industrial zoning district and in another Pinelands business zone elsewhere in the regional growth area and also in the Pinelands town of Whiting, to provide an opportunity for someone to come in, perhaps on the lower vacant piece there, and propose a townhouse or apartment development. So that was helpful to the township in its housing obligation. It was also helpful, frankly, for us when we were reviewing the ordinance and the zoning change, because it doesn't result in the complete elimination of residential development opportunities. It does provide an opportunity for that to continue on this site and in a few others throughout the regional growth area. There's very, very little vacant land remaining in Manchester's regional growth area. Like in Jackson, we asked and the township agreed to continue the requirement for 30% Pinelands development credit use should an apartment or townhouse project be proposed here. That was the same requirement that was in the old builder's remedy agreement, and they have retained it. So we think that provides at least an opportunity. If somebody comes in with a housing project, there will be some use of Pinelands development credits. So it was a good result and recognizes the existing ownership and use, but does provide some opportunities for housing. We were pleased.
Sir. So does the town have fair share affordable housing plan?
Yes, and the commission approved that last year.
And has that been to court or signed off
Yes.
by Fair Share Housing as well?
Yes. I think at the P&I meeting later this month, we're going to do an update for all of you on affordable housing and where some of the towns stand. We're trying to nail down the status. We're aware of a lot of the settlement agreements that have been signed, but then there's a number of towns we haven't heard from at all. So we're going to try to do an update, give you a picture of where, how many towns have proceeded with agreements, who's still working on them, who's implemented the agreements. It's an interesting process.
Maybe the Fair Share Housing is the best source to
We have reached
figure
out
that
to them, yes.
Any questions? Any other questions on the Manchester ordinance? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, we'll move on. Thank you, Susan. This is public comment. This is public comment on development applications where the record is not closed. So any open applications for public comment. We will have a future public comment just for general comments. Anybody on public comment for applications where the record is not closed? All right, once, twice, we'll close that portion of public comment. We do have some master plans and ordinances that don't require commission action. Just want to know if anybody had any questions, comments on those, on that list. There's 3 of them. All right. Moving on next, general public comment. Anybody wishes to just make a comment on any matter? Go ahead, sir. Step up, please identify yourself and go from there.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Dr. Jonathan Peters at the City University of New York. I spoke to Mr. Liggett about the economic monitoring program, and I'm looking forward to working with the Commission. I talked to him about a few ideas. I think that many, let's just say, opportunities for improvement. We talk about tourism, talk about things like, we're talking about today's language redevelopment and use of the Pinelands area as a recreational and visitor aspects. And I think that the commission's economic monitoring is weak in that area. We need how to better understand how different activities in the Pinelands area can more effectively monitor and also understand why the benefit. Because as we add more and more land area to preserved status, we then run up against the issue of jobs, viability, and like these land is under stress from things like online shopping, so those retail sectors help. These things that people don't mind. So.
Thank you. Mr. Akers.
Good morning, members from the Great Harbor Watershed Association. I want to provide a couple updates and comment regarding the water supply issue and the allocation transfer at the top of the project. Winslow Township, my organization, we decided to commit about 10 grand on some work and impervious cover studies and trying to figure out if there are opportunities where water, stormwater runoff can be directed around. Starting work up there. I've been walking around up there for about 4 days in the cold, 5 days in the cold, and I'm seeing some really good things, and I'm surprised and impressed with some of the things that have happened up there in the past. In particular, there's like one old large development, it's high density, it's not in the Pinelands, it's on the other side of the river, Winslow. And when that was built, there was this huge drainage ditch system that was incorporated into the development. And that is like almost totally disconnected from the river. So it's got this moat around it. And all the stormwater goes into this big giant ditching system, which is now all over the ground and it's functioning like things. It's going really well. Plus, because of the sewer issue and water issue, there was a building moratorium for quite some time imposed by DEP because of changing the sewer service area for Camden. And what occurred is the developer was held off until after 2004, when the new stormwater rules came into effect. So once the moratorium was lifted, the new development that's happening there now is conforming to the new stormwater rules. So it's like a lot of development that's already required on the inside. So there's some good things up there. I'll post you more on that. Also, my organization has been working with Hamilton Township down in Pinelands, acquisition of a right of lot, just running out that property, wetlands, and the building that house built on. Moving along with that letter of support from the Pinelands Commission, where that for peace, the township and the watershed association have succeeded in getting 3 acres grants for half. So it's met with the township one day. Now our next step is to go to Van County and see how they have. It's a small project, but it's important because it's related to flooding, storm flooding from hurricanes. All the way up to Hurricane Sandy flooding this line. It's just not the place to build. And it seems that the way the rules are, the only tool we really have is to buy property rights. I'm working on that. Finally, I want to comment on the new proposal by the current administration to have offshore oil and gas exploration going all over the and that's something that the previous administration was proposing in the south of it, not in the New Jersey. And there was a big outcry of comments, tens of thousands of comments, comment period, Bureau of Energy Management was involved in that. It was a big deal. And eventually the Obama administration decided, no, this is done. So not long after that, next administration came in, and now they're proposing even more offshore oil and gas exploration all over, they're included off of New Jersey. So that proposal is in play right now. The comment period to the Bureau of Energy Management is March 9th, so that's when that ends. And I was invited to the Atlantic County Convention of the Freeholders meeting, their last meeting, last month. They proposed two resolutions proposing, one was proposing offshore drilling in general, and the other one was proposing supporting a legislation from frankly beyond them to prohibit seismic testing, which is sort of the first step to before gas drilling. So I just wanted to bring that up, that there is some interest in not having oil and gas coming out of the ocean. It's a lot of fatigue because it's been a long drawn out issue. So anyone who is opposing that now's the time to go online or send letters to go.
Thank you.
Good morning, Katie Smith with the Pinelands Preservation Alliance, and I want to thank the commissioners and the commission staff for being so engaged with the ongoing heritage minerals extravaganza. I know it's been going on for a long time, and I was at the hearing last night on the status minute. I want to clarify, as Ms. Ross said, we are parties to the federal litigation, and that's the indication of the settlement agreement that was reached in 2004 when Cosmos brought the litigation, and the settlement agreement itself is not dependent on time. What's included in the settlement agreement is a provision that says if the state hasn't taken action by this date, Cosmos has the right to reopen the federal litigation. And that's what's been being extended with these consent orders. So finally the state said, okay, we're not going to continue along with this federal order to extend the amount of time in which you have to reopen the litigation. But the settlement agreement itself is still in effect. There's no provision that makes it time. We're also just reread it this morning to make sure. So I think it's important for you all to know that. And I just wanted to report back from the hearing last night. There were, I'm not great at estimating the crowd size, but between 200 and 300 people there. Almost everyone who spoke was opposed to it. A lot of people citing what Ms. Roth and Mr. were saying about traffic impacts. We have the traffic report, you all have it too, that says that the traffic will go from what it is now to an F rating throughout some parts of the BT. So I think one person spoke in favor of it, and the meeting went on for about 2 hours, spoke against it. So I know that the commission staff has all those documents, and I'm glad to hear that viewing them and providing comments.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Rebecca Tusky, and I live in Anderson Township, so I am very interested in hearing the details and going on of this heritage site development proposal. I know there was talk of, I understand, change as far as schools that you had engaged in a prior settlement, which was 2,455 clusters. I'm not sure if it's still remaining 55 plus, but it's like 4,000 something. So it's almost double in numbers. So that's definitely important for you guys to consider. As saying, well, our state, but the number is increasing by that much. I would hope that you guys are taking close looks at that and the environmental impacts of urban development. Not to mention, but that's not my main concern. It's the environment as is yours. So thank you for staying on top of it and working with me today. And glad you guys are. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all the members of the public we have here. But, all right, am I right? Anybody else from the public? All right, if not, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Get into some comments from the commission, and I'll lead. Again, congratulating our new commissioners. Welcome aboard. Look forward to working with you. And then move on to a bit of sad news, which I believe everybody up here knows, that past Commissioner Witt passed away last week. I believe we all have information on his services for tomorrow. I did want to say just a couple brief comments. You know, Fran was, I think, a friend to everybody who knew him. He's been an active member of government and politics in his community for longer than I've been alive. And when I came onto this commission, it's like a father figure. He didn't say very much, but when he spoke, it had a lot of merit and meant a lot of things. And I know he'll be missed. And I just wanted to send my condolences to his family and his friends. And if anybody again needs any of the arrangement details, Nancy has all that. So that being said, is there anybody else any comments about?
Big I think still well. It was sad.
Anybody else comment?
We think, okay. Well, Chairman, I'd just like to join you in welcoming our two new commissioners. We're almost now at full complement. We need a commissioner from the Interior's secretary, but we're almost there, and I'm so glad to see you both. I think it's great that you're here, and I too would like to echo your comments on Commissioner Witt. Fran was one of those rare individuals who spent a lifetime dedicated public service that we just have to admire. It's really amazing that someone can put so much time in all the different agencies in which he was involved, in addition to serving as mayor of his town, national park, for so long, and yet still be a very devoted family man. If you read some of the comments on the memorial page of the guest book that the funeral home has posted for him, you'll see that a lot of the comments are from family members, and it is obvious that Fran had the same kind of strong empathy for his family and warm bonds with family that he did with the folks that he worked with in government. And I'll fondly remember that several times when we would talk, we talk about things like his hometown national park and what a strong cheerleader he was for what a great little historic venue that is on the Delaware River. And he was certainly perhaps its biggest cheerleader. So yeah, he'll be missed. He was a courteous gentleman and of good cheer, and I will miss him. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, right down.
I concur with Mark. We're really going to miss Fran. The last time we seen him was in Cherry Hill.
Yes.
During that meeting, and it was good to see him. He was really in bad health for years, and he made a nice recovery. And I was very saddened to hear it. When I came on the commission 10 years ago, he was like a role model to me. I had long discussions with him, and he was a true friend, real good gentleman, always well dressed, and always had good cologne. But he was the embodiment of a commissioner, and he was definitely a role model, and I'm going to miss him.
I want to echo the concerns, the comments that my colleagues have said. I'm delighted to have the two new commissioners here. It's wonderful to have you, and hopefully we're getting close to a full complement. But then with respect to Fran was a prince. He was a gentleman. He was deeply thoughtful. He was a great commissioner. He was a great colleague. I'd like to think of him as a friend. And I am going to miss him. And he was a wonderful commissioner.
I always remember Fran liking to talk about his garden and his flowers, and I thought that was pretty neat. He always took the high road. And he always added to the commission in very thoughtful responses when he needed to make a response. But I think he really brought character to the commission and the positivity. He would always take the high road. Things that he commented on. So he's missed. He's been missed. I'm sorry to hear the bad news.
I guess since Candy's not here, I'm the senior commissioner now. Makes me feel bad, but because I thought I was free. Anyway, Candy served with all the commissioners since day one, and I think I've served with most of them. And one of the things that I've learned sitting here is that each commissioner brings a unique sense of purpose to the commission. They have different experiences, different organizations that they support, different philosophies about the role of government. And if you sit and listen to what's said, you get nuggets of information from each and every commissioner. But Commissioner Brown was much the same way. He didn't often speak, but when he did, it was worthwhile to listen. And I miss sitting next to Bill. I sat next to Bill for a lot of years. Fran was the same way. He brought a wealth of local government experience. He had been active in nonprofits. He was, of course, in the private business area. So he brought a businessman's approach to the commission, and character, outstanding character and sense of grace when he participated in our discussions, and I will miss him. I wish my deepest sympathies to his family, because it was important to him, as our chairman has noted. But he was a good commissioner. I like to think of him as a good friend. And when you add up all the years, it's a month at a time. It's amazing how long you know some of these commissioners, and when they go, it's like losing a member of the family. So, thank you.
Any other comments?
What Sean was saying, I joined the commission the same time as Sean. I came in on the same day a number of years ago. And the day I arrived, I always had the opportunity to sit over here with Franny by my side. And, I have to say he was a tremendous mentor, to me, and gave me guidance and, what goes on here, what our responsibilities are. But one thing that really stuck with me when he sat down and talked to me one day, he was a true gentleman, a true family man. His family meant the world to him, and that was something I was always impressed with. But he said to me one day, he says, Gary, he says, no matter what success you have in politics, what success you have in business, he says, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is going to be your health and your family. He said, that's the only thing you have to look at as you get older. And that is something that truly stuck with me, because we can all be successful. We can all have a lot of success in our public life or in our private life. But there's a man that truly realized that his final years, how important his family was. And he lived by that every single day. And he will truly be missed. So, thank you.
Anything else from commissioners? Anything else from staff? All right, need a motion for adjournment. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Nobody's opposed, right? All right.